Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, baby, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, in other words, I love you.
Hello everyone, bienvenidos. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the staff of the Mukilteo Schools Foundation and the Mukilteo School District, welcome to our annual fundraiser. To our Mukilteo and Everett communities and partners, and of course to our students, families, teachers, faculty, and staff who work, reside, and serve in the Mukilteo School District, thank you for joining us and for your continued support and contributions to our wonderful community. I'm Aaron Alonzo. I use he, him pronouns, and it is my honor to join you for our fundraiser as the president of the board for the Mukilteo Schools Foundation. Now, I know that this foundation, or this fundraiser, looks a little different than it has in years past. Usually at this time, we would be waking up a little early, kind of reminds me of high school, check in at either Mariner High School or the Future of Flight, get seated at those large banquet tables, and enjoy being in each other's company for our annual breakfast. It's here where we would hear about the work being done by the foundation and the district and our community as a whole, to celebrate our amazing students, faculty, and staff, listen to local leaders and authors and share their connections to the world of education, and look forward to the year ahead. Now, obviously, it is not in our community's interest at this moment to meet in person, which is why we're all here virtually today. But I cannot begin to tell you how much I am excited that you are here tonight, for the mission of the foundation and the district at this critical point in history has never rang truer, and our commitment to our students, families, and staff of our district has never been stronger. The Mukilteo Schools Foundation began in 1992. We collaborate closely with the district, but are our own autonomous nonprofit organization, receiving no district or state funding. Today, we are maintained and supported by our local leaders, businesses, and corporate sponsors. We certainly would not be here today without any of them, so I'd like to acknowledge and thank the following: Cornerstone General Contractors, the Boeing Company, Klein Honda, DLR Group, McKinstry, Dykeman Architecture and Design, Skyline Communications, Hutterball and Aremus Architecture, Mukilteo Monthly, Brent Planning Solutions, Aries Building Systems, UMC, Integris Architecture, Everett Community College, Washington State University in Everett, Pacifica Law Group, Live Oak Audio and Visual, D.A. Hogan Associates, Mill Creek Law, and Third Place Books. The Foundation's mission is to encourage and reward excellence while supporting innovation and creativity in education. We strive to strengthen community involvement and education within the Mukilteo School District. And over the years, our community outreach has only grown in a variety of areas, such as STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. We have collaborated with the district and our local aerospace leaders to provide support for a variety of real-life experiences in STEAM fields. We provide funding for the district's innovative district-wide STEAM classroom extension program, providing field trips that supplement classroom instruction while giving students hands-on experiences that can inspire them to consider a career in STEAM. Literacy. We assist in providing age-appropriate and innovative books and instruction kits across all age groups to instill the joy of reading and, most importantly, the joy of learning. Classroom grants. Our amazing teachers have put thousands of dollars directly into their classrooms for a myriad of enrichment programs. Teachers have used our grants to purchase books, supplies, and to create innovative outreach programs for their students. Teachers have brought vital, exciting programs to their students through these grants. Last year alone, we handed over $20,000 in these grants. Scholarships. At the end of each school year, we award scholarships towards higher learning for our graduating seniors at Mariner, Kamiak, and ACES high schools. Because of the pandemic, we had to pivot our work to serve the needs of our community. This past school year, we awarded Chromebook laptops instead of scholarships, awarding 25 to graduating seniors. We received over 90 applications. In addition to the Chromebooks, we also handed out school supplies during the pandemic to over 1,200 students at multiple schools throughout the district. And college in the high school. Recently, through generous donations from James Abbott, in partnership with Mariner High School, a fund was set up to help pay for hundreds of college and the high school courses for low-income high school students from now through the end of the 2023 school year. Our district continues to grow and diversify. We have almost 15,500 students in our district, over 45% coming from low-income families and 61% from minority populations. And with these changes in our community, the foundation strives to change with it. This community-driven organization is made up of community members. The foundation is composed of Mukilteo area volunteers, including district employees, community leaders, and parents of students, past and present. We wouldn't be able to accomplish all that we have without them, and I'd like to introduce them at this time. Members of the executive board include our vice president, Vicki Strand, treasurer, Kathy Pickus, secretary, Carl Hausman, and ex officio and district superintendent, Dr. Allison Brynelson. Members of the board include Lori Franklin, Kim Gaffney, Pat Hegarty, Ron Johnson, Andre Graham, and Alex Zitnick. And then lastly, our foundation staff members comprise of executive director Ashley Cruz, who you will hear from later in today's program, and bookkeeper Kristen Kimmerling. Whether this is your first or 20th fundraiser, we welcome you and thank you for your support. This is my first year on the board, and it has given me a great opportunity to learn about the variety of ways we supplement the incredible work our district does. I wasn't even aware of the impact this foundation had on my education until I was a part of the team. Yes, I was a former student of the Mukilteo School District, class of 2010. I went to Challenger Elementary School, Explorer Middle School, and my alma mater of Kamiak High School. Go Knights! And for all this time and the years since, the foundation has provided and continues to provide all of these services to support the district's work. I am thrilled to make this foundation and our district successful for future generations, just as they have done for me when I was a student. Again, thank you so much for being here. We have an exciting program for you. Today's guests include Nate Deshane, principal of Mariner High School, Lillian Flood, the ACES High School student support advocate, Kelly Benish, one of our 2020 recipients of the Klein Honda Chromebooks, Caius Wright, a senior and musician at Kamiak High School, and Laura Day, our keynote speaker, poet, and educator. Laura will explore landscapes of learning during this unprecedented time in education. I encourage you to visit the Mukilteo Schools Foundation website, where you can find a link to purchase Laura's amazing collection of books. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the superintendent of the Mukilteo School District, Dr. Allison Brynelson.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Brynelson, and I am the superintendent of the Mukilteo School District. I'd like to take a moment to recognize military veterans. Thank you for your service and for joining us today. While I'm not a seasoned veteran in the military sense, you might say I'm a seasoned educational veteran. I've worked in the Mukilteo School District for 23 years in many different leadership positions. In January, I stepped into the role of superintendent, a position I knew would come with challenges, difficult decisions, and a lot of work, but little did I know. Since January, the ride has been bumpy with many curves in the road. I cannot tell you how many times we have made decisions only to have to regroup and remake different decisions based on new information. But through it all, we have continued to focus on what is best for children. There were and continue to be so many needs to be met, including meals, supplies, and access to technology. And with over 15,000 students, it's difficult to connect with every family. But staff have done a tremendous job reaching out and ensuring families have what they need for their students to be successful during this pandemic. The foundation has been an important partner for many years and has a reach that the school district does not have on its own. They are in a unique position to distribute needed resources and funds so families can get what they need the most. The foundation supports teachers through classroom grants to support innovative projects to further student learning and experiences. Last year, they gave $20,000 in classroom grants, which touched over 40 teachers and their students. But this year, their service was especially critical. The needs were higher because of the pandemic and distance learning. The foundation stepped up and provided school supplies to over 1,200 students for learning at home. They gifted 25 Chromebooks to graduating seniors, and this year they will provide over 21,000 to college and the high school classes at Mariner High School through their James Abbott College Fund. These dollars directly support students and for many are the bridge to higher education and further career options. The foundation staff have shared with me they hope to provide the same support this year, if not more. I want to thank the staff and volunteers who make up the small but mighty foundation team. Your work is important and is meaningful to me, the district staff, and our families. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Dr. Brynelson. Up next, we have Nate Duchesne, the principal of Mariner High School.
Good afternoon. My name is Nate Duchesne, and I'm the principal at Mariner High School. Over the last several years, our students at Mariner have benefited greatly from the Mukilteo Schools Foundation grants. Teachers have secured funding for enrichment activities such as field trips, guest speakers, science projects, just to name a few. This past year, we were pleasantly surprised with a private donation from a Mariner alum. James Abbott, a Microsoft employee, donated a considerable amount of money to fund college and the high school classes for Mariner students. For those of you who don't know, college and the high school is an opportunity for high school students to earn college credit while taking classes at their high school. Over the last 3 years, Mariner has increased our college and the high school offerings over 200%. These dual credit classes through Everett Community College not only give the students a jump start on college credits, but they serve as an alternative pathway to graduation. Each college and the high school class costs the students $220 out of pocket, and they receive 5 college quarter credits for each class. With this generous private donation, we will be funding 100 college and the high school classes each year for the next 3 years. On behalf of the Mariner High School students and staff, I want to thank both James Abbott and the Mukilteo Schools Foundation for the impact you're making in our students' lives. You are much appreciated.
Thank you, Principal Duchesne. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Lily Flood, Student Support Advocate at ACES High School.
Hi, my name is Lily Flood, and I'm the Student Support Advocate at ACES High School. ACES is a choice high school in the Mukilteo School District with an average of 180 students. Students have the option to apply and attend ACES instead of their home school, which is either Mariner or Kamiak. We provide an exclusive, safe, small, and welcoming environment for students who are credit deficient or at risk of dropping out of school. We have an incredibly caring and mindful staff at ACES who ensure that our students are given the resources that they need to succeed. One of our biggest challenges at ACES is consistent attendance. 67% of our students had regular attendance for the 2019-2020 school year. Poor attendance directly impacts a student's ability to academically thrive. In an effort to increase regular attendance, I began an incentive program. Students who had improved attendance were given an attendance certificate and entered into a drawing to win a $10 gift card to places like Chipotle, Starbucks, Subway, and Mod Pizza. I then assessed attendance and rewarded 2 students with the gift card at the beginning of each week. The Mukilteo Schools Foundation grant gave me the ability to purchase these gift cards and reward students for improved attendance, which was very impactful. Students showed excitement around receiving awards and gift cards. I believe that recognizing our students for good attendance brought them a lot of joy and encouraged them to understand the importance of attending school regularly. Grants such as the one from Mukilteo Schools Foundation are crucial for our students. They allow creative approaches from educators that would not otherwise meet the requirements of district budgets. Something like a gift card may seem quite small, but it has a rippling impact throughout our student community because it is a tangible reward for effort put in by a student. These grants also allow our students to access opportunities that they would otherwise be unable to due to financial barriers. Grants are vital for providing comprehensive and innovative systems to our students. I know that both my students and myself are deeply grateful for the grant I was given last year that allowed ACES staff to recognize their hard work. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. Now I get to introduce Kelly Benish, one of our recipients of the Klein Honda Chromebooks.
Greetings in Talofa Lava. My name is Kelly Benish, and it is a great honor to speak before you all today. Before I start off with my speech, I would like to acknowledge the staff of the Mukilteo Schools Foundation, local leaders, the small businesses, and corporate sponsors for the wonderful contributions they have continued to offer. A little background about myself. I was born in American Samoa and was raised in Western Samoa my whole life. In the year 2019, my mom and I finally decided to move to the States, where most of my family resided. Not only that, I came for a purpose. That is to pursue my goal of becoming a soldier in the U.S. Army. For my senior year, I attended Mariner High School, and I was a member of the school's chamber choir. I became a varsity team member for tennis, but unfortunately, our season had to end due to the pandemic. I also had the chance to take part in the MLK Assembly with the Indigenous Peoples Club I joined. Finally, I graduated and received my high school diploma in June. It was quite an experience graduating the way we all did, but I'm glad we all pulled through with no difficulties. I will be studying pre-law courses at Pacific Lutheran University in the next fall, but as of now, I am training with the future soldiers of the U.S. Army with the hopes of enlisting by the end of the year. Sometime this year in August, a number of students received Chromebooks through the Foundation's scholarship. With the fact that we've recently been facing many financial obstacles, I believe this has been a good source of assistance for most of the students and their families, including myself. Let's just say not all families are the same. Some are able to afford electronic devices for their students, and some are not. And for that reason, I am truly thankful for the opportunity I was given. Now, there's not much for our parents to worry about. All we need to do is to make good use of the resources we've got, and by all means, aim to greatly succeed in life, no matter how hard it gets. Because there's once a saying that goes, "Time waits for no one. Get up and own it." Again, thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Kelly. Now it is my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, poet and teacher, Laura Day.
Landscapes of Learning. My name is Laura Day. I'm a poet and an educator. I'm very honored to speak with you. For the past 15 years, I've worked as a writer, teacher, and curriculum developer. I've spent most of my career working in the public school system. I'm reading to you today from the Salish Sea. I may check in from a few locations. I'd like to imagine that we were spending some time together, so I'll invite you to walk out with me. In this moment of separation, isolation, and also collective care, I'd like to invite you first to consider the Madrona. I walk a particular trail each day around lunch. And for the past few weeks, the ideas for this talk have been swirling in my mind as I place one foot in front of the other. Miles and miles into the woods, my mind grows smooth and engaged. I'm able to quiet the buzz of anxiety and fear and open myself to the peace, curiosity, and inspiration of the land. Sometimes I walk alone, and other times, through the unexpected serendipity of remote learning, I'm joined by my son. He's 10. We've been making an effort this year to take advantage of this time and learn from our surroundings. The classroom has become very large for us. I'm writing this in autumn of the year 2020. In years past, this is the season that's always marked the beginning of school. Each of us holds a particular knowing for the seasons. There are common definitions bound by the calendar's imperatives and the Earth's slow swoop in the cosmos, but there's also the living map that we all hold. Associations, sun on the shoulders or toes slowly warming in the living room while the snow falls outside. Autumn has always been the season that speaks to me in the language I love best. Every year but this, students and educators would have been bundled into the static walls of the classroom by now, meeting new friends and shedding the wild warmth of summer. I would be speaking to you from a podium and not through a screen. This year, September has become the month of watching the forest change. October has become the month of watching the Madrona and trying to learn from its many perspectives. I've developed this pandemic habit of observing a different species each month. It allows me to see from a different lens that each story is truly one of many. This month I've had my eyes to the Madrona trees. The turning of the season pushes them into a new stage. One day, all of a sudden, the path is strewn with crisp ribbons of orange, and the trees gleam with a clean olive underskin. The Madrona is an apt symbol for what I'm hoping to articulate today. Madronas are indigenous to the Pacific coast, from British Columbia to California. Each region calls them by a different name. Cross the state line to the south into Oregon, and they are Madronas. Head north into Canada, and they are the arbutus. Listen deeply to the land, and they are the many names of the indigenous languages of the Salish Sea. Tough and adaptive in the wild, Madronas are sensitive to transplantation and overt attempts at human cultivation. I associate them with the clean views of the Pacific Ocean, with survival, with learning, with a sense of being at home. This time of year, as the Madronas shed their bark, it feels like an insurmountable trauma, and one wonders how the trees could possibly survive it. The skin peels painfully and strips and puts into mind the inevitable fragility of the natural world. And by natural world, I include us too. Fragility and mortality. Then the underskin takes on a luminous hue, and the tree enters a new stage of thriving. Education is undergoing a forced adaptation. But much like the Madrona, it may lead to a new and productive stage of growth. Just as a Madrona presents a different aspect every season, new changes allow us to adapt, reframe, and reveal the fresh potential underneath. Learning in America is often untethered from place. This has always baffled my sensibilities as an Indigenous person. Each step of my learning is deeply woven into all the places I've been. Place can unlock metaphors that may guide us through these times of change as learners and teachers. I'm a poet and an educator, but much more importantly, I'm a learner of the land that holds me. I'd like to share the words of a scholar I deeply admire, Dr. Megan Bang. She states, "The natural world makes human life possible. The ways that humans understand, interact with, and make decisions about the natural world has varied across cultural communities as well as over history. From our everyday choices to how we build communities, even in dense urban environments, to national and global policy, nearly every aspect of our sense-making, decisions, and societal infrastructure are shaped by culturally constructed conceptions of human relations with the natural world." Dr. Bang is the creator of a new educational paradigm of science learning in which students are taught to learn from the places they live. We have the capacity to expand the definition of school to ever broader landscapes of learning. Students may be working from home, learning in hybrid situations, or finding new definitions of knowledge in their own neighborhoods. Education is part of the story of who we are, as are the landscapes that shape us. From the Madrona to my own origin story as a learner, like all good narratives, I offer you a beginning in the form of a poem. Nationhood. I am a citizen of two nations, Shawnee and American. I have one son who is a citizen of three. Before he was born, I learned that like all infants, he would need to experience a change of heart at birth in order to survive. When a baby successfully breathes in through the lungs, the heart changes from parallel flow to serial flow, and the shunt between the right and left atriums closes. Our new bodies obliterate old frontiers. North America is mistakenly called nascent. The Shawnee Nation is mistakenly called moribund. America established a mathematical beginning point in 1785 in what was then called the Northwest Territory. Before that, it was known in many languages as the Eastern Range of the Shawnee, Miami, and Huron homelands. I do not have the Shawnee words to describe this place. The notation that is available to me is 40 degrees, 38 minutes, 32.61 seconds north, 80 degrees, 31 minutes, 9.76 seconds west. I grew up on the north side of a mountain in the Snoqualmie Valley. No city, no ambient light, no noise of traffic. In one ear, I could hear the humming cascade of Burnt Boot Creek scuttling off the side of a rock face, and in the other, the Snoqualmie River's branching. All the years of my childhood, I remember wondering constantly. Each meander taught me something new about the shifting net of relationships that informed all aspects of my life. I recollect it as a kind of paradise. When I did chores, I learned how the animals related to me, each other, and their spaces. I learned that I was responsible for another creature, and that set a template to understand the interconnectedness of life. When I looked out of any window, my sight was hemmed by the dark blue of the mountainside, the spiky green of the cedars, the marbled, velvety down of ubiquitous rain. Prompts to my curiosity were all around, and I was given the freedom to explore them. I loved to read the paperbacks from the library, and I loved to read the hundreds of cedars that bobbed in the wind all along my home. Certainly, place was my first teacher, and an inspiring, adept, and compassionate teacher at that. School was more complicated. When I was in 5th grade, my elementary school went on a field trip to a local history museum. It was in a log cabin tucked into a soft grove beside a fork of the Snoqualmie River. Flooding from melted spring snowpack left salty little ridges of faded water damage all around the foundations. A soft-spoken docent gave us mimeographed sheets of paper for a scavenger hunt. The text was the same faded lilac as the wash of bluing in her sparse gray curls. I wandered from the pioneer room to the logging room to the trapping room, tracing my fingers on the parched leather of creaky saddles and staying wary of the splintering old wafers cut from impossibly huge cedars. In the last room, there was a reproduction of a bounty call broadsheet on a long scroll of linen. The paper was a replica of a document from the region's fur wars calling for indigenous scalps. A certain pile of money for the scalp of a man, less for a woman, a token for a child or infant. It was behind plexiglass, next to a topographical map and a rusted logger's spike. I traced over its words through the plastic, my pointer finger following the curve of the name of the river I could hear from my bedroom at night. A classmate waved the handout at me and asked if I knew what the word commerce meant. The ubiquitous stamp was in my braids. My scalp was prickling with a dark feeling of fear, and my head felt so heavy. I recount this difficult memory because it was formative to who I became. It is a part of my education of place. I loved school. I was a bright, compliant, and hard-working girl who lived with a book in hand and a desire to please. I trusted my teachers and desperately wanted to make them proud. But there was a tension, too, that field trip clarified in my young mind. I had been taught at school that it was my indigenous ancestors who had done the scalping and the making of war. That was the part of me that was supposedly uncivilized, at least according to the textbooks that I read. I remember this point as the moment I knew I was different, and that some 100 years in the past, standing in the exact place, a girl like me could have been killed for being what I was. I also knew that I had been lied to, and that shifted my worldview of education. From that day, I grabbed for agency over my own learning with both hands. The pain of this discovery crystallized into an understanding that my curiosity would be my weapon and my armor against racism and discrimination. Some 30 years later, 10 of them spent teaching middle school, the memory prompted me to write this poem. Raven Talks Curriculum. 1. Raven curls his talons against the newspaper rag of a 7th grade textbook that attributes his myth to an anthropologist who traveled along the Pacific coast 50 years ago, recording tribal creation stories. 2. In 5th grade, I rode the bus to the local museum on a school field trip. The river was splitting its banks, creeping up the margins of the road. Mottled stones with the patchy lichen skin and bulky silhouettes of kids slumped on a couch were disappearing under the murky slush of floodwater. Bright pink flash of molting leaves, glimpsed through the bus window, hinted at salmon in the eddy. At the museum, I was unhinged by old bounty signs from the fur wars, offering the largest pile of gold for men's scalps, less for women, a token amount for children and infants. I traced my finger over the name Snoqualmie, unbelieving. Listening to the curator read aloud from the myth of Raven, I counted on my fingers back 10 years at a time to 1860, until the teacher jerked them away into my lap and snapped my attention to the front. 3. 50 years ago, the 5 most likely themes employed to describe Native Americans in textbooks: noble savage, warrior, chief, protester, white man's helper. The school district procures new texts, feigned Native narratives, as if to say with a shrug, colonialism had children and grandchildren too. In the end, even the stories are acquisitions. Who is this trickster, sauntering receding coasts, scattering light and darkness? When I consider the complexities and joys of teaching and learning, now amplified by the challenges of our time, I'm always drawn to the metaphor of the map. What is the universal sign of a classroom if not a map? Maps are my first visual memories of learning inside 4 walls. My dad loves road atlases and always has. When I was very small, he would run my finger along highway routes and tell me stories of all the bluebirds in Bickleton and the size of the sturgeons in the Columbia River. These tender memory palaces offer directives that compel and confound me. Opening a book to an intricately inked world of the imagination seduces me into dizzy infatuation. Gazing at an allotment map with my grandfather's name crossed out in pale violet stills me with grief. So here's to the great pleasures of the map. But let us not forget that a map is also a story of ambiguity, power, loss, and pain, history, and potential. When we map education, we may forget that there are multiple sides to every story and lose the nuance of what it is to teach a child before us as opposed to a data point allocated to a document. I have a deep personal relationship with maps. In 1830, my people, the Shawnee, were removed from the land that all of our generations had learned from. Every story of learning in Shawnee culture is conveyed through place. This loss was profound, is profound, and continues to echo across generations, including the ways that we learn and are taught as Indigenous people. I'd like to read a poem that illustrates this loss. American Towns. Seneca, Missouri, soft wash of casino jangle seeps through the Pontiac's cracked window. The map flutters on the dashboard, one corner grit-soaked. Sparse Ozark wash of tawny green, a herd of buffalo lowing in the side pasture. Here is the voyage, conjured homeland to conjured homeland. No, not that clawed trajectory of the past, but a fierce conception that quickens and scrapes inside just the same. The drive to Ohio will take 11 hours and 48 minutes, cost $195 in gas. Chillicothe, in the subtle semantics of Shawnee, a tightened fist of connotation. Clan name and principal city, all human systems working in harmony. Limpid sachet of corn tassels along the byway. Historical markers beckon the reader to plunge an arm into the loam. Tweeze with fingers to feel how fecund. No rocks to bend the plowshare. What heirloom fields of Shawnee corn hum under the crust beside the carbon of burned council houses. August wheeze of Bad Axe Creek, drought thrusts large boulders jutting up waist high, deep grooves in the center for grinding corn. What is owed grits in the corners of the mouth. The plaque on the museum's door in Xenia extols a Revolutionary War hero. The ground on which this council house stands is unstained with blood and as pure as my heart, which wishes for nothing so much as peace and brotherly love. Summer school kids mill around the museum. The teacher introduces the panel of tribal council members as remnants of the once great Shawnee tribe. Listless murmur of pencils across paper. In the front room, a volunteer curator leans over a diorama, anxious to capture the real story of a Revolutionary War camp. He stipples red paint onto the sandy ground, points with the paintbrush to the next room, where 53 letters from 1783 broker captive trades with the Delaware and Shawnee. Wan shades of ink from blanched olive to cornflower, blotted in the rough or refined sway of long dead hands, each one made phylum by the promise of whiskey. Leaving Xenia that evening on an old Shawnee trade route, retraced in concrete. Monloothus Town, Wapakoneta, Blue Jackets Town, Macachak, Wapatomica, Xenia, the influence of the pollen upon the form of the fruit. I want my ink to bellow. Where is this ground, unstained with blood? Maps, madronas, Revolutionary War battlefields, and small-town museums. We've been on quite a voyage together. I still believe that public education is a place of profound capacity. In my career, I've seen changes that give me hope. Teachers are committed to meeting the needs of students, and students are passionate about creating a better world. Just last week, my son's elementary lesson was focused on the living tradition of local tribes and the revitalization of kokanee salmon, a sharp and beneficial change from my experience at a local museum when I was his age. This is not to say that education is a place of equity and inclusion for all students, as schools remain echoes of the social inequities of our society. We have serious work to do to fight racism and marginalization in our schools so that they can become places of healing, nourishment, and power. We are all people of place, bound together and woven into an ecosystem of mutuality. I'll end today with a gift, my very favorite memory from teaching. You've taken a journey with me, and I'm grateful for your time, energy, and devotion to public education. Juvenile orca swimming under Cape Flattery. Early in my career, when I was still naive enough to think a 3-day field trip manageable, I hiked to the uppermost vantage point of Washington State, Nia Bay. I hit the viewing platform flanked by 2 8th grade girls who clicked the school camera while I toted a backpack full of grape juice pouches and granola bars. Between 2 cedar-spiked sea stacks, an orca's black and white silhouette sashayed across the waves, young and frisky as a toddler in bathwater. At 24, I thought I'd captured the essence of education right then and there, climbing through an ecosystem to the subtle prize of several heads turned at the same angle to observe a miracle of whaleskin erudition. Breaking down my classroom, the last year I taught school, I found the picture tumbled in a storage closet next to old seating charts, primary bright reward stickers, a stale granola bar, and foil. In the frame, faces are locked in astonishment, blazing bright grins at the lens. Clear-skinned madronas fan behind us. Under the photo, a title, "Having sighted a killer whale, June," is written in a student's looping cursive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Now I get to introduce our Executive Director of the Mukilteo Schools Foundation, Ashley Cruz.
Hello, my name is Ashley Cruz, and I am the Director of Mukilteo Schools Foundation. By now you have heard all about the amazing programs that we offer, from classroom grants to senior Chromebook scholarships to funding college and high school courses. But as we wrap up this event, I would like to tell you a story about a pencil. You may not think a pencil would warrant a time slot in our program, but to me, the pencil is the essence of all that we do and why we exist. Last spring, when schools shut down and families were scrambling to adjust, we decided to run a school supply drive to help with at-home learning. Our goal was to deliver as many supplies to as many free lunch sites as possible, but not quite sure we would raise enough for all 12 sites. When we put out the ask, we were blown away by your responses. We received thousands of dollars in donations and hundreds of packages were delivered full of supplies. We barely had enough room in our storage to contain it all, but more on that in a moment. Handing out all of these supplies was a bit hectic. Kids were coming from all directions and we couldn't seem to get the bags made fast enough. At one point, the sweetest little boy picked up his bag and opened it to see what was inside. His face lit up, and I assumed it was because of the pencil sharpener, which was a hot item, or the paints, which was equally as hot. But he reached into his bag and pulled out a pencil with the biggest grin on his face and said, "A pencil! I don't have one of these at home." At first I thought he was messing with me, but I soon realized that he was in fact genuinely thrilled to have his very own pencils to bring home. I quickly grabbed a handful more of pencils and put them in his bag, to which he gleefully skipped away to show his mom. This moment, with a pencil and the happiest boy I have ever seen, has been the most gratifying moment of my job thus far. I think of this moment often, and it inspires me to continue forward in the great work that we do here at MSF. Now back to the supply drive results. Your responses to our ask not only allowed us to hand out supplies at all 12 lunch sites to over 1,200 students, but we were also able to donate hundreds of supplies to the Boys and Girls Club and YMCA. This is the sort of generosity that I love about this community, and this is the sort of generosity I'm calling each and every one of you to this afternoon. We do not receive district or state funding. We are 100% funded by private and corporate donors such as yourselves. And so I ask you, friends, family, and foundation supporters, to consider making a contribution this year that is above and beyond, so that we too, at Mukilteo Schools Foundation, can go above and beyond in helping to meet the needs of the students throughout our district. There are 3 ways in which you can give. First, you can write a check made out to the Mukilteo Schools Foundation and mail it to P.O. Box 753, Mukilteo, Washington 98275. Second, you can hop on our website and donate directly at www.mukilteoschoolsfoundation.org and just click the donation tab on the top bar. And third, you can donate through Facebook by searching for the Mukilteo Schools Foundation and clicking the donate button on our top pinned post about this event. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about Mukilteo Schools Foundation and for your consideration in donating to our many wonderful programs. Back to you, Erin.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Mukilteo Schools Foundation's annual fundraiser. We are so glad that you could spend some time with us today. To close us out, it is my honor to introduce Caius Wright, a student and musician from Kamiuk High School. Caius, take us out.
Wise men say only fools rush in, for I can't help falling in love with you. Shall I stay? Would it be a sin if I can't help falling in love with you? Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Take my hand, take too, for I can't help falling in love with you. Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help